So if we're negotiating the price of something, it's never about the price. It's more to do with how this is serving the longer project, or what is it that I need long-term for my organization, or how do I want to feel? I want to feel like a winner. And then we have a broader understanding of the problem, and we can exercise some critical thinking or creative solutions.
Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Turkington. And before we get into it, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our mates at Dark Horse Coffee. Thanks very much for supporting the show. Today, we've got Noa Sheer. Noa is a negotiation strategist, and she's also an author, amongst many other things. So, Noa, thanks for coming on, and it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So from what I can see, negotiation is everywhere. You know, we're negotiating all the time. And I think if you want to be a competent leader or high performer, it's probably a skill set you're going to want to have in your locker. Do you see that people are too soft when it comes to negotiation, or are they just unclear?
Yeah, I've been observing negotiations for about 15 years now. And I don't see that people are too soft. I see that people are not methodological, as in they have this assumption that negotiation skills are a soft skill and it's individualistic. So I have my own style, you have your own style, we have varying levels of competence and negotiation, and that's fine. And it's okay for these people who are all different to work in the same company and represent the same company in different ways. What's missing for them is defining negotiation skills as a hard skill, like a methodology, and to have that terminology and the structure to have everyone negotiate in a similar way. So if we all worked in the same company, there would be the company way of negotiation. What they're missing are the structure and the template and the terminology to negotiate methodologically with strategy. So yeah, they're missing clarity.
Yeah, and then there's a lot there that I'm really interested in, but we'll start with strategy. So what type of strategy should someone take into a negotiation? Like maybe they haven't done a lot of it before, but when you say strategy, what does that actually look like practically?
It's a list of, well, the way that we come up with our strategies at Sheer Negotiations is a list of prompts. So you want to think about what is the approach that you're going to take to persuasion in this case. Do you want to take a power approach, which is when you threaten into compliance? Do you want to take a rights-based approach, which is when you bring all the evidence and show your reasoning and the benchmarks for why you are right and they are wrong? Or do you want to take an interest-based approach where you sell it to the other party as an opportunity for them? You know, this is a service to you. That's the first thing. Then you want to be thinking about redefining the problem. So if we're negotiating the price of something, it's never about the price. This is, you know, what are the drivers for you to get that price? Or what is that price serving you? Or how is it serving you? What is it from me? What is it that I need? Sometimes it's not about the money itself, or it's not about the immediate outcomes of this negotiation, whatever it's about. It's more to do with how this is serving the longer project, or what is it that I need long-term for my organization, or how do I want to feel? I want to feel like a winner. And then we have a broader understanding of the problem, and we can exercise some critical thinking or creative solutions. The next thing is to map out all of the stakeholders. So a lot of my clients miss this step. It's not, even if it's a dyadic negotiation, it's never about just two people. It's usually a map of people who are involved. There are veto powers, there are decision makers, there are people who are not at the table who are making decisions. There is an audience sometimes, there is an influencer of some sort. And all of these people in the mind map, they have their own sets of interests. So that's something that we map. Then we think about how to approach this in terms of defining the problem, or defining the agenda, or the main messaging that we come in with, how we set the stage and influence tactics around that. Then we think about, well, what are all the negotiable items? What are the planning points, as in our resistance points or walkaway points, stuff like that. And we think about possible outcomes, how to present those outcomes as in options for how the deal will look, and what questions or what closes we will have at the end. I've just given you the main stuff, but it's a list of these prompts. And when you go through the entire list, what you have at the end is a plan for your strategy. And you can be strategic. You can always come back to that plan.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that resonated with me that you said was around drivers, and often what you see on the surface is not actually what you're dealing with. And you see that a lot in leadership, high performance. If you manage people, when they come into your office, what they present with at first is very often not the actual underlying issue. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Most of it's below the waterline. So I'm really interested in, you said drivers, figuring out people's drivers, and you also
Mhm.
said influence tactics. So down to how you set up the room, those types of things. There's a lot of military crossover there. And can
Yeah.
you speak to that a little bit more around how would you go about figuring out someone's real driving motivation, for example, and then what types of influence tactics might you employ? And talk to what you can talk to.
Sure. I mean, these are two very big topics. The drivers are the reasons why this person has come into the negotiation with you. Why have they chosen you as the primary source of promotion of their interests? Why have they not gone elsewhere? And what is it that they want to achieve in the long term, as in, what are their needs? Now, those needs might be tangible, but they might also be intangible. In fact, they're definitely also intangible. And the intangible interests, as in the feelings-based interests. So when I say interests, I mean needs, drivers, it's all the same.
Yeah, motivations. Yeah.
Yeah, the motivation. So the intangible motivations or interests are the most interesting because they can be easily satisfied without anything costly. So you don't necessarily have to make a concession on anything that is concrete, anything valuable to you, and still fulfill those intangible interests. For example, this Harvard study condensed all of our intangible needs into these three categories. And so now I teach my MBA students, for example, to recognize these three categories of needs in anyone that they negotiate with. So we can preempt, like we can start to sort of guess what sort of interest the other person will have even before we meet them, no matter who they are. And those three categories are safety. So people want to feel safe. They're not being taken advantage of. There are no like negative repercussions to this decision that they're about to make. No one's going to raise their eyebrows at them. They're not going to be embarrassed. Their reputation won't be hurt by this. They won't lose any relationships over it. They're not going to jeopardize their job. So that's safety. The second is agency. People like to feel in control. We were talking about that before, especially leaders. We have this thing where we're control freaks and a little bit. We want to make sure that things are happening the way that we want them to happen. And so identifying that need for another person means that I will strategically give them as much control as I can in the process. So I'll lay things out in front of them. I'll give them choices rather than try to shove some outcome down their throat. The last one is status. So people want to feel respected.
Yeah.
And to make someone feel respected, all you have to do is ask for permission to have a conversation or, ask them, do you prefer a phone call or do you want to meet at the cafe or would you like to have it at your office? So there are really non-costly ways of making people feel safe, in control, and respected. Safety is, as easy as giving an NDA, or there are lots of ways that I provide to my clients to make the other person feel safe. And while that feels really quite soft, it feels like not a very powerful way to negotiate when you're really taking care of the other party and you're making them feel the way that they want to feel. It's actually the best way to get what you want, because making the other party feel safe and in control and respected is going to lower their defenses, and they're going to be far more open to listening to you. So, we could talk about people's drivers that are tangible, but if you want to mix, that the topic of drivers and influence, I think that's where I would start. How does that person want to feel? How can we make them feel that way? And then the influence tactics, they also kind of relate to people's drivers. For example, reciprocity. There was a study that was described in the book Influence by Cialdini. Have you read that one?
Yeah, I just finished it. It's a fantastic book.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So he describes how people respond, or how waiters get the best tip out of their patrons. Do you remember that one?
Don't remember it specifically, but I remember it being mentioned. Yeah.
So the study was in using all sorts of methods to try to raise the average tip in a restaurant. And they tried, of course, using the mint. You know how you get a mint with your bill? So when the waiter would give a mint with the bill, the average tips would raise by 3%. When it was 2 mints, it was 14%. I mean, that's such a cheap way of getting higher tips, of influencing the other party to really be on your side and be open to you and want to give to you. They were able to get it up by 23%. And it wasn't through more mints. It was in the way that the waiter would give the second mint. So if the waiter drops, the bill with 1 mint at your table and then walk away and then go, for you nice people, here's another mint, then tips will go up by 23%.
Yeah.
And the reason was that we have this intangible interest, this is coming back to interests, of feeling special and feeling seen and feeling unique. And that, perception that the other person has gone out of their way for us, whether it be with a second mint or with, my real estate clients might send an email saying, we saw that you were quite anxious at that first meeting. It's quite all right. That's how everyone feels when they buy their first house. We thought this might make you feel better. We don't usually do this, but here's some market data. Whether it's something like that, an email like that makes you feel seen, that has huge potential to influence the other party. Anything that you give that makes them feel special has huge potential to make them open to you and receptive to anything that you're saying, because you've created this dynamic of reciprocity. They're indebted to you in some small way.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a really easy one to implement as well. And lots of my clients do it in really quite clever ways.
If I can just talk to that real quickly, and then I'll let you carry on, because it's amazing stuff. But also, that's just so out of the norm in today's day and age, eh? Hey, what's up, guys? Just a quick note to say, hopefully you're enjoying the show. If you are, feel free to like and subscribe, and you can share it with your mates. You can also find us at LinkedIn and on Facebook, or check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz. Cool, that's all from me. Let's get back to the show. We live in such a disconnected society, I think, and people are very individualistic and can be quite self-absorbed. And, you just go out on the street, jump on a bus or a train or whatever, and nobody's talking to anyone. Everyone's just on their phone, doing whatever they're doing, listening to a podcast, or it seems like a very disconnected society. So when you have someone, even more so, that takes the time to get to know your name, or you have a conversation with you, or offer you some gesture that's authentic and you can feel that they mean it, I think that's just going to stand out so much more these days, because it's rare, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if we're completely disconnected. I don't think it's rare. I think you're right that it's rare in business, because we have this sense that, first of all, we're super busy. Everyone's really busy and we're just running around. We are truly time poor, but I don't know if we need to be this busy. I mean, if it's sufficient to write an email to someone as a way of introducing yourself, it's not going to create any sort of relationship or dynamic of reciprocity. If we can find the time to meet them for a coffee and buy them a coffee, or lend them a book, or connect them with someone else, or do anything where it feels like you've gone out of your way for them, then you'll have a very different relationship. And Chris, I have to say, this is very pessimistic, but I think that understanding belongs to the older generations. And the younger you get, the more, I don't know, even our generation feels like it's okay to just send an email or to text. And the younger generation feel very uncomfortable speaking face to face or picking up the phone, because they're so used to text-based relationship building.
I don't disagree with that. And I see as well, it seems like a lot of people don't follow through on the commitments that they make. Like, I feel like integrity is missing a lot, maybe in business, but in life in general. And I think it might be because of that, because there's no like emotional investment. Like, you stand with someone face to face and shake their hand and say, yep, I'll see you at this date and time and we'll do this thing. You feel that emotional connection, and it's like that authentic piece that goes with that. But now people can just send a text. They're like, oh, I can't make it, or maybe they'll just ghost you. Like, there doesn't seem to be a big cost to entry. So yeah, I feel like people can be a lot more dismissive, and they don't have to feel that human element of that disappointment or the feeling of being let down. I'm not too sure why that is. Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
We need to intentionally build that commitment, that loyalty. Salespeople do it really well. They know that they need to invest in their customers. They invest time getting to know them, or they might even jot down details that came out of a first conversation, the name of the dog, the fact that your daughter's just, about to take her exams to get into uni, or they'll write down these details, and the next time they see this potential customer, they'll be like, oh, and how's your dog Rex? And how does your daughter go with those exams? And that just immediately creates this connection and this loyalty of one party to the other. Whereas if you're there to just, do business, and you're walking into a negotiation with someone that you've just met for the first time, you haven't established any sort of relationship, and you're immediately saying, well, this is what I want, it's just not going to set the stage for a smooth negotiation. I think any book that you read on negotiation skills is going to take you right to the first word in the negotiation room, at the table, right? Most of the books do this. There are very limited sources that talk to you about, how do I set it up right? How do I ensure that I have created the right narrative for the other party about who I am to them? So when people see me, for example, just me as an example, they might, or you as well, because you run, leadership training. They might go, well, here comes Chris, the know-it-all, here to tell me how to be a leader. Or here comes Chris, the salesperson, he's going to sell me something. Or here comes Chris, his presence signals to everyone that I'm incompetent, that I need a leadership coach. Those are very negative narratives to have. So if you wanted to have a smooth negotiation with that person, you best ensure that you have built the right narrative over the last few months, or however long you've known them, before the negotiation. So they go, oh, here comes Chris, the problem solver. Here comes Chris, the person who makes me look good. Here comes Chris, my secret weapon. Whatever it is, the narrative must be a positive one, and it must make them feel, safety, agency, and status. And it all relates back to interests. So I think when you ask about strategy, and influence, there are so many things that are overlap, and at the center of it all is those intangible interests.
Yeah. That's such a good way to think about it. And how do you know when to walk away? I can see that people, you get into a negotiation process, or any conversation for that matter, that's meaningful and has some high stakes attached to it. How do you know when to walk away? Because it could be very easy to get taken beyond where you had planned to go.
If you have a negotiation plan, it should be very easy. It should be very, very clear. So if you've taken the time to create a negotiation strategy in a plan, it means that you've gone through the prompt that will ask you, what is your, I call it a walkaway point, you could call it a reservation point, resistance point, whatever. When the deal presented to you is beyond your walkaway point, you need to walk away. The way that my clients find it easy to walk away, or the way that they make it easier for themselves to walk away, is by having a best alternative. In the field of negotiation, we call it a BATNA, a best alternative to the negotiated agreement. It's a silly acronym. It's basically a plan B. So if you do have a plan B for anything that you're negotiating a new job, the terms of this new job, or you're negotiating where to go for dinner with a friend, you're negotiating anything that you're negotiating, you must have a best alternative. Best because you might have a list of alternatives, but you must know what is your best one. If your best alternative is better than the deal that's being offered to you at the table, you must walk away. So you can align your walkaway point, or the signal, or the place where you must leave the negotiation, to either your BATNA, best alternative to this negotiated agreement, or to where they've hit a red line, as in they're not meeting your needs anymore. And those might be tangible needs, or they might be intangible needs. For example, if you're yelling at me in a negotiation, I don't feel respected, then that's no longer meeting my interests. And I'm quite happy to walk away, especially if I have a BATNA.
Yeah, for sure. And you spoke about red lines there, and you've witnessed a lot of negotiations. You deal with people doing this all of the time. What are some red flags that might indicate that, hey, this person's in trouble in this negotiation, or they've run out of road, or they're not too sure where to go next? What might that look like if you're observing that?
Do you mean the person that I'm representing, or the other party?
Yeah, it can be either. Like, when you look at a negotiation or a conversation, are there any tells or giveaways or red flags that hey, this person's floundering here, or they're not too sure what to do next,
Yeah.
or hey, we're on top in this negotiation. I hate that terminology because it feels like you've got to suppress the other person. But do you know what I mean? Are there tells that somebody's not comfortable or not too sure what to do next?
Well, the thing that I see the most is that people get they too invested in a negotiation when it's no longer meeting their interests. It happens because of a few things. First is the sunk cost bias. So this is a bias where if you've invested so much in something, even when there are signals that it's no longer meeting your needs, because you've invested so much, you want to finish the job, or you want to just, you don't want to have to lose everything that you've put into it already. So negotiators will be, I'm just imagining the last big negotiation that I was involved in. It was a 15-year contract between two very big parties. One party had already invested months of planning and maybe 3 or 4 negotiations with the other party. And the deal on the table was not meeting their needs, but they were still so willing to continue this conversation because, well, a few reasons. They didn't have a BATNA. And also the sunk cost bias was drawing them back in. I mean, we've invested so much. Let's just check it again. Maybe we can get more. Another red flag is that the other party is not negotiating in good faith. So I've seen another party come in and waste an hour with chit-chat under the pretense that they want to get to know the other party, that they're being genuinely curious or they're building a relationship. But I knew that that wasn't true when in the last 2 minutes of that hour, they were like, we need to make a decision. So let's go, how about this price for our services? And that's not a nice thing to do because it's not giving the other party enough time to really consider or come back with a counter offer. What other red flags? Well, I've seen teams negotiate as the group, and they're not quite sure who's meant to open the meeting. Oh, that's the worst. But there's no clear messaging. There is no leader in this team who is taking the reins and saying, here's what we're meant to do today. Here are our expectations. This is how much time we've got. Let's start with this. Let's then progress to that. There's no one facilitating. Now, I call that person a quasi-mediator because someone has to be the facilitator in the room. Sometimes that's me. This is what people hire me to do. I could represent a party and still be a quasi-mediator in the room to set the stage and to ensure that we're meeting our deadlines and that we're coming back to the real issues, etc.
Yeah, and just give the chat some, excuse me, I got a couple of flies here, which is annoying. But I guess just to give the conversation some structure, right? Otherwise, I'm going to guess it just descends into chaos.
And also the parties like some signaling that we're making progress. It seems, especially with very complex negotiations where it's perhaps there are multiple parties. I've been involved in negotiations with, say, 5 parties and also a commissioner, or so the government and also 2 or 3 other parties. This is a complex negotiation and very high stakes. And it's easy to believe that we're not making any progress if we're meeting again and again and again and we still haven't closed the thing. There's still one person or 2 parties that are not happy with a proposal. So you might feel very discouraged and you need a leader in the room. This is where leadership skills come in and our skills overlap. You need a leader in the room to be the optimistic person and to say, actually, we've made a lot of progress. Look at what we've done so far. So we've been able to agree on all of these items. It's just the contentious bits that we're still working on, but that's fine. That's to be expected. You need someone in the room to lead, to be the optimistic person, to signal the things that we have, like in a roadmap, the things that we've already done, the things that are about to happen next, and to come up with different solutions. So if we've got 4 or 5 parties in the room and they can't agree altogether, there are techniques that you can use to get agreement. One such technique is the non-paper, where you theoretically, or you create like a theoretical agreement that's not binding for any party. Like, what would it look like if we did this, this, or this? We're not bound to this, but what would it look like if we agreed on that? And so that's a nice way to make progress. And another way to do it that I love, and that's used widely actually, is the Delphi technique, where you go, you know what, we've agreed on quite a lot together in this room. Next, I'm going to go home. I'm going to send you all an email about the contentious issues. You give me back your feedback. I will try to come up with the best solution based on what I know from each of you. I'm going to send it out for feedback, and we're going to do 3 or 4 rounds of this. And whatever I come up with after the 4th round, that's what we're all committing to. So there are all sorts of methods of bringing everyone into agreement, but someone needs to pick up the reins and go, I'm going to lead this now.
These are all tools that you can bring to the conversation or to the process to try and keep things moving forward in a meaningful way, I'm assuming.
Yeah. There are so many of them. There are so many tools. A negotiation often hits an impasse, point of conflict that we don't know how to move past it. And then if you don't have the skills to either avoid it or to move past it and continue making progress, then you might lose out on that deal. You might say, well, it didn't work out. And a lot of value is left on the table in that way.
What other types of things do you see that weaken people's positions or parties' positions? Are there like specific behaviors or attributes that don't serve them in a negotiation situation?
The big one, and it comes from all of the books, is being positional. Have you heard of that before?
Do you mean like how you actually set up the negotiation itself around where the chairs are and where the tables are? Are you talking like tactical level stuff or?
No. Although that would be interesting too.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe not in the
No.
context that you're using it.
Being positional means not remembering that this is truly about interests and holding on to your goals by the fingernails. So just to clarify, your goals are the things that you'd like to achieve in the context of this negotiation or within the scope of this negotiation. So while we're speaking, I'd like to shake hands and for you to agree to A, B, and C. I want a certain price, I want a certain deadline, I want certain payment terms, I don't know. And those goals are, people need to remember that they're just a means to an end. They are one route to success. If I achieve this, I'm able to promote my interests, my true needs, my long-term goals. If I can't achieve this, maybe there's an alternative. Maybe you've got a better outcome for me. For example, you might say, look, I can't do this price or these payment terms, but what I can do is I can cut the cost of compliance. So if you comply with my request, I could cut the cost of compliance and I can give you new value as in, let's do it my way in this negotiation, but tomorrow I'm going to save you $100,000 somewhere else. And that might be another alternative way of meeting my long-term interests. I need to be open to that. If I'm coming in really, really strict or rigid, sorry?
Rigid, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, rigid with my goals, thinking I have to meet these goals. It's this or nothing. It's non-negotiable. I might be missing out on a way forward. It makes me weaker in the negotiation because I'm not flexible to finding all the possible value on the table. I'm not even thinking about what other resources, what are the other ways in which we can promote each other's interests, serve each other. That, being positional, I see it all the time. It's not like a unique thing. Everyone is positional. I'm positional when I argue with my husband. Even when you know how to focus on interests, if you're feeling defensive about what it is you want to achieve in this conversation, you're probably being positional. You're holding on to those goals. For example, I don't want to give you an example that is too personal, but I don't know. I'll think of an example, but the reason why people are positional is because for many reasons, first, they're afraid of the negotiation. If they're being flexible, then you might take them for a ride. If they're not going to come in and be very clear on what they want to achieve, you might somehow sweet talk them into doing something they don't want to do. Or maybe they don't have the authority. So in the negotiations where I'm involved, you've got a large company at the table being represented by someone who doesn't have the authority to make creative solutions, to make decisions on these creative novice solutions. So even if there's amazing potential, they're literally saying, how can we do as least damage as possible? Or how can we minimize change? Or how can we just get this over and done with as quickly as possible? Tell me what's the minimum damage. They're not there to explore for new options.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could get just CEOs, C-level people in the room negotiating for companies, you would see more creative solutions, I would hope.
Yeah. And that's really common as well in the leadership space. There's a huge amount of crossover here, and that one, tunnel vision, just very, very rigid in their approach. This is my plan. This is how it's going to go. And then inevitably, a plan doesn't last very long because life's not linear like that. It's changing all the time, and it doesn't really care what your plan is. And then as soon as it gets outside what they have sort of prepared mentally, they explode. They can't deal with the ambiguity. It creates all of this pressure and stress. And then they really, really struggle to recover from that. So, have a plan, absolutely. But I think you're silly if you don't have, we would call them a backup COA, a backup course of action, a backup plan 2, 3,
Yeah.
maybe 4. And that gives you the confidence to be flexible because you're like, okay,
Yes.
when this doesn't go to plan, it's cool. We'll pivot to this. And then if that doesn't work out, totally fine. We can pivot to this. Without that, you've got all your eggs in one basket, I think.
But wouldn't it be, just with a bit of empathy for these people who don't know how to be flexible, wouldn't it be much easier if you had a plan where different options were already calculated in terms of the value that you get and comparable? So you've already done the work in seeing that the deal on the table is one option, but there are some other options in case that falls through, and they all serve me just as well. Because if you don't have a plan like that, it might be very scary to pivot. You need to recalculate what that would mean for you and the firm. What would it mean for the bottom line? What would it mean for public opinion of your brand? What would it mean for, how would the media pick it up? Or what would everyone at the firm think? Would they understand the value of this? I mean, it's quite scary when you've got a lot of responsibility. It's much safer. And this is again the safety thing. People want to feel safe. So they want to stick to what they understand. So if you do have a negotiation plan the way that my template will prompt you to make one, you can be incredibly flexible in the negotiation, and you're always protecting your interests. You never give into something that you're not ready to give into.
I'm hearing that preparation piece a lot, which is obviously important in anything that you do. How do you help people get back on track? So they're in these conversations, negotiations, and things aren't going to plan or by the playbook or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
How do you help these people get back on course, Noah, without having an explosion?
I think it is completely valid to ask to take a break. You don't have to finish a negotiation in one sitting. You can make up an excuse if you need to, but you must take a break in order to sit and plan again. Think strategically about what it is that you're trying to achieve, when you'd be happy to walk away. Maybe in order to get through an impasse, what you need is to form an alliance with someone or find new leverage before you come back to the table. Maybe you need to reconsider how you've understood the interests of the other party. Maybe you haven't understood them. Maybe you need to do a little bit more research because now new information has come to light, or all of your assumptions are not being validated at the table. So take a break and think about it again. The way that I work with my clients is that there is a task list for those breaks. So we will think strategically about how to use this time to come back to the table with new power. And that's not power over. It's not necessarily we found leverage, we can threaten them into compliance. That's not the point. The point is to come in with a new sense of clarity and to see a way through and to see what will create the ultimate win-win outcome. And then how do I present that to the other party in a persuasive way so that they will see it, they will see the value. Especially if they think of me as some sort of either salesperson or their adversary who's not trustworthy. I need to be able to recognize that, and then maybe I can use the break to create new trust with this person. They do this in political negotiations all the time. If they're negotiating a peace agreement and they can't reach that peace agreement, which usually happens, they take a break of 2 weeks, 3 weeks to try to understand the situation, come up with a BATNA or come up with another option within this negotiation and try to build trust. Maybe we need to swap out the parties at the table. If there's one person representing a party and they're not the right person, they don't have enough authority, they don't have enough creative thinking skills, or they've got relationship conflict with me, or they don't get along with me, maybe they need to be swapped out for someone else.
Trust, huge one in everything, big one in the leadership space. We work with trust a lot. How does a negotiation expert go about building trust? Because I guess without trust, you don't really have very much. How do you go about building trust?
Look, there are many ways. You can build trust through a track record. If you opt for longer term relationships and not, if you start having repeat suppliers, for example, or work with people that you know before, it's quite easy to then have that identification-based trust. It's a type of trust where people have worked with you before, they know your values, they understand you, they see the similarities between you, and so there's trust there. In larger negotiations between big corporates, between countries, where it's not so much about the individuals and the trust between them. You must build calculus-based trust. So the other party needs to be able to calculate that it's in your best interest to not screw them over, basically. So that's why they bring in third parties to be able to either ensure everyone stays in line with what's agreed, or to punish the sides if they do something wrong, or there are contracts involved to ensure that there are consequences for bad behavior. But calculus-based trust is the one used most in business. It's just a list of things that you can do to signal to the other party that you wouldn't dare do anything to hurt them. But of course, in New Zealand, I'm sorry?
So we're here in good faith, essentially. That's what you're trying to signal.
Well, it's in my best interest. Like, I won't do anything wrong, or I have every reason to be honest with you because there's mutual gain, or it's in my best interest to do so. So you can calculate whether you like me or don't. You would calculate that I would negotiate in good faith because of the system of pressures. This is called a systems approach to negotiations, where you map out not just the people involved, but the pressures on them. So just as an example, if this is a really big negotiation and now the media is involved, I'm more likely, as a party to this negotiation, I'm more likely to be ethical or to avoid certain behaviors because I'm afraid that the media will pick it up and will report on it. And you know that. So there's more trust in the process. I know it sounds a little cynical to revert to the systems approach and to calculus-based trust, but realistically in business, you need that. Just like in a partnership, say two leaders, merge their companies together, or they start a partnership, they do need a contract there to ensure that one is not going to screw over the other side or to leave in a bad way. What New Zealanders are looking for more than, I'd say, Australians or Americans is that identification-based trust. Is there a track record? Can someone vouch for you? Do you have good values? Can I predict how you will behave? Or are you going to be a difficult person? Do I know anything about your family? Have I met your community? Do I know where you live? Like New Zealand they appear to be, I've only been here 3 years, but they appear to be a lot more interested in that genuine connection, and they want to be able to trust you genuinely, not just because there's a system of pressures around.
Yeah. And that's how we go about getting guests on the show, like yourself, Noah, and other people, is we'll ask the guest at the end, hey, do you know anyone that might be a good fit for this podcast? And then that trust transfers because the person we've just interviewed beforehand almost vouches for us. They're like, hey, these guys are pretty good. They're not bringing you on with any ulterior motives or anything like that. So yeah, we find that works really well in this space as well. Last question I want to ask you around compromise, because you hear that term used a lot in negotiations around when it's the right time to compromise. But when does compromise become a mistake, in your opinion?
So in the MBA courses I teach, compromise is the word that shall not be uttered.
Okay.
It's the lazy look. There's compromise in layman's terms, and there's the technical term compromise. Compromise is I want to draw out a graph that I use in my classes. But if you think about the many approaches that we can take to solving an agreement, that's solving a problem or to getting agreement, we can compete, as in get a win-lose outcome. If I'm competing, I'm trying to get a win for me at your expense. We can collaborate, which is a way to find a win-win outcome. Or we can accommodate, or we can avoid, but we can also compromise. And compromise is a meh sort of outcome. It's sort of meeting in the middle. I don't want to take the time to think too creatively about how we could get a win-win. So let's just resort to whatever is fair enough. Where are you again, Chris?
Marlborough, top of the South Island.
Okay, so I'm in Auckland. Why don't we meet? Should we meet in Wellington? No, it's too close to you. To be more fair, let's meet somewhere in the middle. That would be compromise. Or if you want to have Chinese food for dinner and I want to have Indian food, let's just settle for Thai. But doesn't that feel like a lose-lose outcome?
Yeah, you've just left so many opportunities on the table, yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to either accommodate or to compete. If we can't find a win-win, wouldn't it be better for me to accommodate and say, you know what, did you want the Chinese or did I want the Chinese? You did. So
Doesn't
we'll
matter.
just
They're
have
both
Chinese.
good.
We'll have Chinese today, and next time we meet, we'll have Indian. Or let's understand why it is that you want Chinese. You really want, I don't know, you want dumplings. Well, I found an Indian place that also serves dumplings. That's a creative solution. It would be so much better than settling for Thai, because Thai is not something that we each wanted. And I think when people make this jump, from the goal that they set to somewhere in the middle, that somewhere in the middle might sound fair, but it may not be the best, most efficient allocation of resources. It may be that I needed the price or one element of the deal to be closer to me, and I'm willing to compensate you with things that are more important to you. For example, the time of the deal, the length of the contract, or I don't know what. Wouldn't it be better to really explore for the best, most valuable solution rather than meeting in the middle? And that's why you've got books like Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference, because splitting the difference, compromising, means meeting in the middle, and it's not the best outcome.
Going to forget that now. That's very well explained. So that will sit in the back of my mind for a while. Very cool. Hey, no doubt this has landed with people, Noa. Where can they find you and see what you're up to?
So the company's called Sheer Negotiations. It's the company that brings technical negotiation skills to companies, to top-tier companies in New Zealand, in Australia, and the US. So if you're looking for the methodology, the template, the terminology, the technical stuff to get you sorted for negotiations, go to sheernegotiations.com. You'll find free resources there. You'll find my contact details. You'll also find me on LinkedIn, wherever else you look for Noa Sheer. And I'm happy to have a conversation.
No, it's been so cool. And I've still got so many things I want to ask. And I hope we can do this again soon.
I would love to. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed the conversation, then you can check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz, or you can follow us on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And thanks again to our mates at Dark Horse Coffee. We appreciate your support. That's all for today. Catch you later.